I've partnered with and coached hundreds of investors, and I've seen people go from stuck to absolutely unstoppable, from quitting their day jobs like Rachel did to landing their very first deal like Pamela. And here's what's wild, almost every single one of them has at least one of these regrets. And if you can avoid just two or three of these, you'll be years ahead of where most people were when they started. I've structured these regrets from early beginner stage all the way to building a long term legacy. So let's jump right in. The first stage is getting started before you even have your first deal. The very first regret I hear over and over again is number one, not starting sooner. Everyone thinks they need to wait for the perfect market. And then years later, they wish that they just started. They just gotten out there and done it. The real truth is the perfect market just doesn't exist. You don't wait and buy real estate, you buy real estate and wait. Holding real estate long term is one of the easiest ways to build meaningful wealth without having to have some clever business idea. Now, the second regret is why many people fail to get started in the first place, and that's over analyzing instead of acting. This is what I call the YouTube University syndrome. People watch hundreds of hours of content, they analyze every scenario, and they wait for certainty that will never show up. You see, deals don't happen inside of spreadsheets, they happen out in the real life. You don't learn how to ride a bike by learning the theory and the physics of how a bicycle works. No, you get out on the bike and you pedal. And of course, you're wobbly at first, but after some practice, you start to get the hang of it. Now, perfection is the cause of this next regret, which is number three, chasing the perfect deal. So many investors pass on really good deals in the hopes of finding that one perfect unicorn of a deal that's out there. Then 10 years go by and you still have nothing to show for it because you didn't buy any deals. So, when getting started, you want to get on base. Get a good enough deal to learn the process. Of course, you still want to be prudent and make sure you don't lose money, but the worst feeling is realizing you could have built something really meaningful and great if you just moved on to get a good enough deal. And that takes us to the fourth regret, which is a bit counterintuitive. And number four is not building skills before chasing capital. A lot of new investors want to raise money, but they don't yet know how to find or structure a good deal. So, money tends to follow good deals and competence. So, if you build skills, capital becomes 10 times easier to attract. It feels a bit like the chicken or egg problem, like which should come first, the deal or the money? And well, I'm sorry to say, it's actually neither. What comes first is skills. It's the knowledge of how to do this business, which you only get by going out there on the field of battle and finding a good deal, which you will then most likely wholesale or share with somebody else. And the ultimate kiss of death regret for a newbie investor is number five, treating real estate like a hobby and not a business. Becoming good at finding deals is really hard work and it takes just a lot of effort. Now, it's a pretty simple process in the scheme of things, but that's not to say that it's easy. The mistake that most investors make is just doing the work when they feel like it. They have no systems, they have no measures, they have no tracking, and they have no weekly targets or what outcomes that they want to get. They just have this like these vibes, these feelings, and the vibes don't close deals. If you treat this like a business from day one, you'll separate yourself from 99% of all the other investors out there. Now that takes us to stage two, which is growing a portfolio. You start to get deals and now you're adding deals to your portfolio. This is where most people spend years spinning their wheels. And I'm certainly very guilty of this first one. Number six, which is only buying single family when they could have gone bigger. So I can't tell you how many people spend 5+ years buying one house at a time when they could have bought 10 doors at once. Multifamily really isn't harder, it's just different and often easier to scale. So it took me 3.5 years to go acquire 40 single family properties. Then when I switched to multifamily, I was able to acquire 500 doors in 2 years. So now pay attention to this next regret, and that's number seven, which is underestimating the power of creative financing. Don't make the mistake of relying solely on traditional banking options. You end up waiting on a perfect credit score or a bank approval instead of learning how to structure win win seller financing deals that you can do right now. The sellers are out there and they're waiting for your offers. You just have to know how to ask. And the good news here is the market right now is primed for these offers. So make sure and join our free school community to find out when our next creative financing challenge is being hosted, where I'll show you how to do that. The link is in the description. Now, the next regret, number 8, is ignoring cash flow and betting on appreciation. So you must always buy properties that cash flow when you're scaling your business. The mistake is gambling on the market going up instead of just buying for cash flow and then just enjoying the market going up whenever it does. You see, assets that pay you month after month is what you're after. That's what saves you from the fluctuations of the marketplace. Timing the market is luck, and you don't want to rely on luck. Cash flow is the strategy that keeps you operating through the ups and the downs. Now, number 9, the regret is not building a trusted power team. So, real estate is not a lone wolf business, it's a team sport. Trying to do everything yourself leads to burnout, delays, and a lot of missed deals. This team can be brokers, contractors, lenders, property managers, title companies, etc. And then you might start hiring internally, like an assistant or a VA or a bookkeeper. This can also extend to your partners, third party buyers if you're wholesaling, and private money if you're looking to buy properties. And there is safety in a multitude of counselors, so go out there and start building your team. The most common regret of investors is losing their shirt, and it usually is because of this next regret, number 10, not understanding financial risks. The biggest risk you take in this business, bar none, is borrowing money from institutions. So be careful not to get locked into bad loans, short term balloons, or deals that require a refinance to be successful. If you don't know how you're going to exit a deal, you shouldn't enter to it in the first place. I've personally made this mistake and barely got out by the skin of my teeth. So you want to know your exit plan before entering a deal, and the only exit plan cannot be just, oh, I'll refinance in the future. All right, to our final stage of scaling and building a lasting legacy. Now we're talking about the stage where deals are really starting to stack up in a very good way, but real wealth is empowered through what you build around the deals. So beware of regret number 11, which is failing to raise or line up private capital early. I've seen great investors lose amazing deals because the money wasn't ready. The time to raise it isn't when the deal hits your inbox. You want to dig your well before you're thirsty. This goes back to the lesson of building your network and your team early. Private lenders and creative sources of capital will make everything so much easier now that you've learned how to find deals. And so, a really common regret is now finding that unicorn of a deal you've been looking for, but not being able to take it down because you don't have the money connections established ahead of time. So, on the flip, you also want to avoid regret number 12, which is overpaying because of fear of missing out. We don't want to fall victim to FOMO here. When you start competing emotionally instead of underwriting logically, you can get crushed because your emotions get in your way. You want to underwrite like a pro, even when everyone else is losing their heads. So know your buying criteria ahead of time and have the discipline to stick to it consistently. There's always another deal out there. And along those same lines, let's talk about regret number 13, which is skipping due diligence or not stress testing deals well enough. This one really hurts. Underestimating expenses, kind of discounting vacancies or deferred maintenance can turn a really great deal into a nightmare. So the pros don't skip their due diligence. They actually lean into it. They keep doing more of it because they're watching out for mistakes. So you must assume that every deal you get involved in is flawed. And during your due diligence, you're trying to uncover the skeletons and prove yourself wrong during that period. So don't assume it's a good deal, assume it's a bad deal, and then during due diligence, you find the data to change your mind. Now, speaking of data, that ties in nicely to regret number 14, which is not documenting your systems or building a real business. You want to actually run a business. You don't want the business to run you. So document your systems and processes so that you have a trusted team that can go out and execute your plan. You want to avoid the regret of building yourself a new job that you didn't want in the first place. That entirely defeats the purpose of what we're doing here. Systems are what turn income into a company and a company into freedom, which is why we're all here, is to build that 3x freedom: time, location, and financial freedom. And the final regret of investors is number 15, is not thinking long term. Remember the old adage of always start with the end in mind? You want to think about your legacy, your tax plan, your estate planning. You want to have a thoughtful entity and estate structure with serious plans on how to handle both taxes and succession. You don't want to get to the end of your investing career with no way to transition that portfolio to the next generation. You can build wealth without a plan, but you cannot keep wealth without one. The good news here is you can avoid every single one of these regrets. This isn't theory. These are exact lessons learned from real investors, me, other people I've talked to, people just like you. We have walked this path before, so you don't have to fall into the same pitfalls that we did. If you want to shortcut years of trial and error and get real strategies, real scripts that we use, and real support, you can join our free school community. The link is in the description below. That's where I break all this down step by step, how to find deals, how to fund them creatively, and then scale your portfolio to actually set you free. So don't wait for the perfect time. Start Stacking's Win now, and I'll see you in the community.